Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. What we're going to be talking about today are the best learning strategies for programmers. What I see a lot of online are people spending a lot of time working really hard coding, spending 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. And while that's really good, it's a lot better to have a plan and a strategy. You won't be as efficient when you're learning how to code as someone who really has a plan and is sticking to it, right? And you can't just hope that, if you're spending all this time and all this effort, then, you're eventually going to actually become a programmer. That's not really how it works. So today we're just going to be outlining some things that you guys can implement into your own strategy of learning how to code. That'll make your progress that much faster and increase your chances of becoming a programmer. So if you're new to the channel, my name is John Vine. What we do here is we talk about software engineering, and I try to use my experience to give you guys tips on how to become a full-time software developer. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. So the first thing I would recommend is to pick a resource if you're learning how to code and just stick to it, right? What I see a lot online, and what I'm sure that you guys have heard a lot, is that people get stuck in this kind of tutorial hell when they're just bouncing from course to course, trying to learn, and they're never actually coding. Now, what happens when you're learning a couple of different courses is that naturally there's a lot of overlapping topics, right? You don't want to be learning the same thing multiple times. There's no point of doing that. So what I would recommend instead is don't do that. Pick one course, pick a resource that you're learning, Free Code Camp, Udemy, whatever it is, pick one thing and see it to completion, because you're going to be getting the entire picture instead of just learning the same thing multiple times, right? When people are using a lot of different courses, they're just wasting time and it's not really productive. So I would recommend, guys, pick one, stick to it, and see it until the end. Like, actually finish it, and you'll have made so much more progress than if you took 3 JavaScript courses and kind of took bits and pieces from each one. Just pick one and stick to it, and it'll make your life a lot easier. Another strategy is to just ease into learning how to code, right? I made this mistake for sure when I started learning how to program in university. I got really excited at first and was really like, okay, I have to spend hours a day learning this or else I'm gonna fall behind. And then quickly I got overwhelmed and I kind of got burned out. And since then I've kind of worked on it. And what I would recommend for you guys that are just starting out is to really ease into it. Don't try to overwhelm yourself, because if you're gonna be out here studying 10 hours a day and you're gonna get overwhelmed real quick, you're gonna burn out. And it's much better if, instead of studying 10 hours a day, you study 1 hour every day, right? It's like, it'll make you stay that much more consistent. And when you're initially building that habit of learning how to code, you're spending like 30 minutes a day, and then, you slowly increase it. But I would definitely not recommend, your first time learning how to code, just hopping into it, spending a whole day, 8 hours learning. Unless you're super passionate and it works for you, then that's awesome. But for the majority of people, I feel like it's a lot better to ease into the learning process. And this really leads into my next learning strategy, which is not to cram. Another thing that people do is, instead of, if you have like a course, for example, and there's 10 hours of content, you're thinking, okay, I can bang this all out today and then move on to something else tomorrow, right? That's very tempting. Obviously, I can see this thought process definitely in myself as well. But like, think about it. Instead of spending 10 hours on this course today, you can spend 1 hour a day. In 2 weeks, you'll be done. And what's going to happen if you're spending 1 hour a day is that you're going to retain the information a lot better. You're going to be revisiting information. For example, like if the first day you spend an hour learning something, and then the second day you're going to be like, okay, wait, what did we learn? What did we learn last time? You're going to revisit your notes, and it's going to kind of stay in your memory longer, rather than if you're taking in this massive amount of information all in one day. You're not going to remember a lot. You're going to be very overwhelmed. You're going to be going back thinking, oh yeah, we learned this, but I don't remember this. And basically your learning process is going to be hindered. You're going to think you're making a lot of progress, but you're really slowing yourself down. So definitely don't just cram everything at once. If you want to retain the information and actually understand it, I would, break a course down, spend a couple of days, spend a couple of weeks, separate it into 1 hour a day. And that'll really make you learn a lot better. Another strategy is this concept of active and passive learning, right? So you're not always, when you're learning how to code, you're not always gonna be actually coding, right? You're gonna be either watching a video, reading a book, or like reading slides. So whatever that may be, stuff like that is passive. When you're not actually doing anything, you're just taking information in. And so in contrast, active learning is when you're actually applying what you're learning. You're actually coding, or you're making a side project, or you're practicing for interviews, doing leak code, whatever it is, as long as you're actually applying what you're learning. And so, if you're learning how to code, you really have to balance the two. You can't just be watching videos or reading books, but also you can't just, hop into coding, because you're not gonna know the syntax, you're not gonna know what anything is, you're basically gonna be lost. So finding this balance at your stage of where you're at learning to code is pretty crucial. I'd say, when you're starting off, you're probably going to be watching more videos, reading more books, and you're not actually going to be coding as much. But as you, progress, that passive learning is going to, take a back seat, and the majority of your learning should be the active learning when you're typing code, when you're building projects. That's really, I think, when you're going to make the majority of your learning, and that'll come a bit later. But when you're a complete beginner, perfectly normal to, kind of read more, watch more videos. But what you want to do, especially as you progress, is, change this ratio of how much you're actively learning, how much you're passively learning, and kind of adapt that into where you're at. And while you're passively learning, while you're watching these videos, you might get a lot of questions, and this is another thing you can implement into your strategy. When you're going through any kind of content, any kind of resource, make sure you're keeping track of the questions that you have. This way, after the course is done, after the video is done, whatever it is, you can go back, revisit the concept, and then, kind of answer all those questions that you had before. And this way, you're not forgetting any topics, you're really getting a lot more understanding of the whole thing, and then you're ready to move on. Whereas if you're just watching a video, you see something, you're like, oh, okay, what is that? But you don't really keep track of it, you just keep going on, and then this snowballs into 5, 10, 15 kind of different topics that you've seen mentioned, but you don't really know what they do. And then when you're actually coding, you'll be like, okay, oh, so I remember that, I don't really know what that does, and then it'll kind of hinder your progress because you'll keep having to check back on what these topics are. You're going to keep revisiting your notes. But if you keep questions, if you keep a list of questions, if you keep answering those questions as you're learning, you'll definitely retain this information a lot longer, and then it'll make your experience of learning how to code and actually programming a lot easier because you'll actually have that knowledge. And finally, one of the best things I think you can implement into your strategy and your plan of learning how to code is to try to teach concepts to other people. I've mentioned this before, but I think the best way to verify that you understand something is to explain it to someone else, preferably someone who, isn't that experienced, isn't like a full-time software engineer, or hopefully someone that's also, where you're at and trying to learn how to code. And so if you can explain a concept to them, that'll really mean that, you have a solid understanding of it, and it'll make you understand that concept that much more. Now, what you can do is, make a blog where you're explaining these topics that you're learning as you go. You can go online on different communities, on different Facebook groups, come on my Discord if you want to explain something. There's a lot of different ways to kind of work on teaching concepts to other people. You can make a YouTube video, make a YouTube channel, teaching people about different things. But as long as you're actually, teaching these concepts, and if it'll make your understanding a lot better, and if people are really understanding, that definitely verifies that, you understand it well. You can keep a journal, or you can just look at a mirror and explain it to yourself. It's really that simple. And I just think, verbally saying it or typing it out, but actually explaining it and going through the whole thing will really point out things that you don't understand, because you're going to think you have a good understanding, you're going to start explaining, and then, oh wait, I actually don't know this. Otherwise, it'll just, confirm that you do understand it. So teaching concepts to other people is definitely a great way of learning how to code. Now, all these strategies are well and good. I just thought I'd end off with a couple of tips to give you guys if you're, in the process of learning how to code. One of the things that is most important is being able to sit at a computer for long periods of time and be focused. You don't think about this a lot, but there's not a lot of people that can, spend 4 or 5 hours a day just sitting down in front of a computer coding, working on a complex problem. And this is something that eventually you're gonna have to do and get good at if you really want to become, a full-time software developer. And if you can work on getting into this kind of state of focus where you're able to, be very productive, be very concentrated on a certain problem, that's a really good thing, because those moments are when you're going to be doing your best work, and you'll be able to solve, the most complex problems. Now, finding that way to really get focused, that's going to depend on you. I like to put some good music on, kind of, instrumental music, maybe get some tea and just really focus. So whatever works for you, definitely use that to be able to get into that focused state. Another thing that's very beneficial while you're learning is to just have a specific goal, right? This can be, getting a job, but I would recommend, having a smaller goal first, being able to, okay, I want to get a working website. And so if that's your goal, and then you're learning web development, as you're learning, you can apply these things to a website, and then eventually you can, make it go live, and then your goal will be achieved. And because you had that goal, and because you were working to achieve that goal, you're able to measure your progress, and you were actually able to finish what you started, right? And that's really important, to stay consistent, to stay accountable to yourself, because a lot of people don't really have any goals, don't really have a strategy. They just go into learning how to code and then are surprised when, they quit or they give up and they don't actually become software developers. So having a goal, having a plan is super important, guys. And finally, when you actually do become a software developer, when you do reach your goals, whatever they are, the most important thing you can do is to keep learning. The last thing you want to do is to, 5, 10 years down the road be irrelevant, have your knowledge be obsolete because you only focused on one thing, you got a job, and then you only focused on that. You want to keep learning so to make sure that you're up to date with other technologies, and so when you're ready for another job or you want to work on something else, you'll be able to. And not only that, it'll just make you become a better programmer because you'll be up to date with the latest technologies, and you'll know what's going on. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Really try to implement these strategies when you're trying to learn to code, because it's really easy to just sit down, open a course and just go. But if you have no plan, no strategy, no goals, it really does make it harder to actually succeed and see it through, see your goals through, and become a software developer. So definitely use these strategies, guys. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below, comment down below if there's any strategies you guys use when you're learning how to code. And as always, guys, have a good day and take it easy.